The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Did some shrink wrapping windows earlier, not with window kits though. I took the window kit tape and I paired it up with stretch wrap that you would use for food. It's a little bit thinner than the stuff in the window kits, but a lot less expensive. The interesting part is that I was doing this on a cold, dry day with a ton of static electricity as a result. So it was effortless to get that shrink wrap to stick together. Put down multiple strips, 1, 2, 3, and you just do this afterwards. Just the static electricity from that would get them to stick together, and because it's so light in the first place, they crinkle together like nothing. Well, that's why the folks at Glad call it cling wrap. Anyways, got a few windows done. Might do some more later on, but the lack of drafts from the draftier windows, I'm already feeling the difference around the main area. Project area should probably be next. So here's the pile speakers again that I was looking at as something I could put inside those Radio Shack boxes and maybe squeeze some more life out of them that way. There's one major problem though, and that is the shape. I think with the shape of that giant magnet compared to the piece of junk ones that Radio Shack put in there originally, I think that would cause some space issues. It is only 1 3/4 deep for speakers that have a total depth of 2 1/4, but I think this large magnet would hit stuff on the inside of that case. I think it would also be hitting stuff with the amplifier board in the one with the amplifier. So no, those childhood speakers will not get a new lease on life as a result of the tinkering lately. I could probably blow these speakers if I really wanted to. There certainly are some speaker blowing videos on there, but once you've seen one, I mean, it's a little paper cone. It would make some really crappy music until it blew out with a puff of smoke. Come on, I have better things to do. Plus, the novelty of it kind of wears off after the first several speakers. Instead, what I'd like to do is square off these Logitech Z200s against the Logitech X series predecessors that I happen to have sitting around. We'll clear off the table and make some room for that. But here's the thing. I picked these up because they were one of those holiday humbug specials that was on sale at a sizable discount. So these are probably the first pair of decent $15 speakers I've ever picked up. Usually I pay about $20 or so for a 2.0 pair with no subwoofer like this. But let's just say that this, I don't know if this is inspired by Beats by Dre or something, but this design is horrible. And it represents a lot of ways in which this is not better than its predecessor from 5 years ago, which I still use with my laptop setup that I basically use as a replacement for a bedroom TV. So let's clean off the table a bit here, and let's bring out the challenger here, the venerable Logitech X140s from the late 2000s. Alright, we're setting up for our showdown over here with the Logitech Z200s versus the X140s from a few years ago. Now, it is no secret that I am not a fan of computer speakers, or computer audio, or anything of that sort, any high-end computer, anything audio related. Because the industry has developed to the point where instead of getting high-end computer speakers, you just get real audio equipment and make it work with your computer. We have sound cards and even onboard audio that encodes to Dolby Digital or DTS. The computer industry got the message several years ago, so any high-end computer speakers nowadays, forget it, just not worth it. Practically an oxymoron. On the low end, however, entry-level computer speakers, if they have some decent mid-range, can serve the purpose of the TV speakers of yore. Basically, if you just need sound, and that's about it, one of these can serve your needs quite nicely. So this design, I guess, is inspired by the Beats pill or whatever. It looks kind of reminds me of Beats by Dre for some reason, but I think it's a stupid design anyways. We'll talk about those in a bit. And then there's these. I've been using these with my bedroom TV replacement setup, aka a laptop that I watch YouTube on or something like that as I'm dozing off in the evenings, or even Netflix on those lazy days when I don't feel like getting out of bed. I've certainly done that a couple of times over the years. But these things, they basically get you up to the level of a built-in speaker on an old CRT TV, which could provide decent mid-range, a little bit of low and a little bit of high, but it wasn't exactly what folks would call hi-fi, but it was doable. Now, I use these in lieu of a 2.1 kit with a subwoofer, because oftentimes the subwoofer, like those ones I have in the kitchen, is basically a woofer in an echoey box, a little 4-inch da-da-da. I would much rather have decent mid-range and not some bass wannabe mid-bass crap messing with me. I mean, I know the sound's not going to be great out of these, but these serve the purpose. Now, I found out through dismantling one of these earlier, the bottom cone is a drone cone. It's what's called a passive radiator. It's not actually a speaker. Basically what these things do is the air that's moved via the real speaker moves these, and it kind of, functions as an extra woofer-ish or something. So our controls between the two, as the music finishes copying over there, the Turd Shiba will be doing music duty, but the controls are very basic. You have some kind of volume knob, and then you have tone adjustment, which is a bass treble controller, essentially. It's a bass treble controller, although my experience with this is that it basically just turns the treble up and down, or something along those lines. Or no, it turns the bass up and down. You have your headphones, in case you want to have headphones with one of these, and a music jack for an MP3 player. Now these things pick up where it left off, but with a little bit cheesier construction. The plastic feels a little thinner, you have headphones MP3, and the tone has been moved over to the side. Because, the whole set it and forget it thing, I usually leave this up all the way all the time. The whole set it and forget it thing, this kind of has been relegated to over here. There is one difference, though, but one very noticeable difference between these two sets of speakers. That could be an actual serious issue even as you're unboxing them. Can you tell what they are? Can you tell what this difference is? I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. I'm going to shut up here for a bit. Take a look. One of these is missing something that the other one has. There is nothing that goes over the front of the cones for these newer ones. Why? Is this what the kids like doing nowadays? Nearly piercing a cone trying to get the darn things out of the box? That's what happened when I took these out. I was like, do these really? There's gotta be something, right? Something that snaps on, or it's magnetic, or something that can go over the top of these things and be like acoustically transparent. Like these had built in, but I guess even this amount of metal is too much these days. No, these were exposed right out of the box. So, you're trying to get the speakers out, you gotta be careful not to pierce a cone or surround or something like that. What were they thinking? Is this what the kids like these days? Anyways, these are not going to be optimal conditions. I'm probably going to have to pause the dryer for a bit to get rid of its drone in terms of background noise, but this is also not an optimal listening position. But I want to compare these two speakers playing like stuff from the YouTube audio library or something like that. Put them right next to each other and see what the tone differences are, what the loudness differences are, and most importantly, what the wattage differences are. Because these old ones actually have a proper AC cord and a power supply in here, while these ones are running off of a block, similar to the one that you would charge a tablet with. But it's not USB on the end. Let's get some tunes over here, darn it! We're in full-on Showdown mode, waiting for the music to finish transferring over here. One generation of cheap Logitech entry-level stuff versus another. It looks like the cone size is a little bit bigger on these versus their predecessors, but there's no bump in the middle, so, well, a little bit like Woofer++. Again, I'm thinking Beats by Dre here, but I could be wrong. I don't know what this surround material is supposed to be made of. A cross between foam and rubber? Who knows? We'll see if it turned yellow or not. And of course the casing, a little bit bigger on these, but the plastic feels a little bit more hollow on these than these did. So some cost-cutting measures definitely over the last few years with the construction in these things. Now, next question, how do they sound? As soon as the music finishes copying over, we'll close the door to the bathroom, that's where the dryer's going, and see what we have here. Also worth noting, there is a power light under there, but I put some electrical tape over it, so it's not a bright light when I'm trying to sleep. Alright, the music test has started. We're playing Silent Partners, You're No Help from the YouTube audio library, and I've already confirmed that these two are drone cones, just like their predecessor on the new ones. Because if I impede these two, it gets softer, but if I impede these two, nothing happens to the volume. These aren't doing anything. So hopefully if you almost pierce a cone trying to get these things out of the box, it's one of these and not one of these, although piercing one of these would cause an air leak. So just like their predecessors, the bottom ones are drone cones. Now, I also found out that just like their predecessors, that all the tone really does is turn the bass up and down. There, all the way down. Now we turn it up. It's just a little bit more pronounced on the low end. It's just a little bit more pronounced on the low end. But it actually made more of a difference on the old ones. Switch back to the old ones here. Now, turn this all the way down. It's like there's no bass whatsoever when it's turned all the way down. So you listen to these at the same level, make the switch. You can hear when the laptop speaker takes over. I don't have a mini splitter anymore, so I gotta get old-fashioned. Sound is comparable, but the old ones have a little bit more range to them. Therefore, plus having an actual grill in the front so you can't accidentally poke out a cone, these will retain their position as the speakers for my bedroom TV replacement setup. Next question, which one goes louder? Okay, we ready to start playing that song again? Let's begin and we'll start with the new ones and turn them up all the way, see how loud they get. Ready? Okay, here we go. That's max. Nothing much of distortion here. Alright, ready? A little bit of noise on those. A little bit of distortion, but there's more noise. A little bit of distortion, but there's definitely more amplitude there. So, these have a little bit more range to them, despite being cheap entry-level crap, and they're also louder, and the amp on this one is more prone to hum and noise when it's not plugged into anything. For some reason I have this nasty feeling there's been some corner cutting over the years, and I'm not just talking about not having a grill on them anymore. Okay, our last test of this sloppy speaker showdown, or whatever you want to call it, cheap speaker showdown, etc., obviously involves busting out the kilowatt to see what the power consumption of these various devices is. Now, of course, this is an LCD, not an LED, so it might be hard to read out, but the old speakers are sitting at 2 watts power draw standby. So without even being turned on, they're already at 2 watts. We turn them on, and there's no sound, of course, because the wrong plug is plugged into the laptop. Duh.
Epic fail.
I've got the song on repeat now. Alright, let's try this again. So, just by turning it on, we go up to almost 3 watts. Then we can get back down to 2 when we turn it off. It's interesting that there is standby power draw, though. So, without even raising the volume, we gain a watt just by turning the amplifier on. What happens if we turn the tone down while the volume's all the way down? Does not budge. The knob's also hard to turn too, has potentiometer issues apparently. Let's add some amplitude. So it goes from, they're 5-watt speakers, of course. you can play with the watt meter to get it above 6. But the interesting part is just the standby power draw of 2 watts. Strange, you know? They only go up to 5 watts, but you get 2 of them just by plugging them in. How much do I want to split hairs on being a tree-hugging hippie or something? Right, let's see what the newer ones can do. So the new ones actually have a power block that outputs 5 volts at 1500 milliamps, but in practice, the draw on the 120 volts AC is nothing when it's not turned on. Now what happens when we do turn it on? Remember, the tone's up all the way up on these from earlier. There, the amp is on now, but it's not playing anything, and it's still not, well, 3.3 watts. So there's no standby power draw, and already these are more efficient. Is this thing broken or something? It is on watts, right? It's not on VAs? That right there is 5 years of technology right there. Yeah, sure, there's nothing covering up the cones, which is rubbish. However, there's no standby power draw, whereas with the old ones it was 2 watts just for plugging them in, capping up to 5 watts at full blast. But here's the thing, these were just a little bit louder than those. They had a little bit more dynamic range than those, but 5 watts versus you have to really fiddle around to get these things to crack the 1 watt mark. This is crazy. And of course they are advertised as 10 watt speakers, but audio watts is very different from power draw from the wall. So theoretically, if I want to split hairs on power usage, what I should do is make these horrible things my new TV speakers for the bedroom setup and retire these to the project area where the power comes through an AC adapter that's turned off a lot of the time when I'm not working on something. Isn't it amazing what a difference 5 years can make, even with cheap speakers like this? Hey, let them play! Let them play! Might as well. Doesn't have to draw any power. And yet these go almost as loud as their predecessors that actually draw wattage that's measurable. What kind of a world do we live in when people can have horrible taste in speaker aesthetics, but can get amplifiers so efficient that they can match their predecessors from 5 years ago without even drawing a watt? I may never know the answer to that question. So even though there were some blatant cost-cutting moves made, these things are notably more efficient than their predecessors. If there is a way we can snap some mesh over the top of these things, I think, well, that could be a good mod project. If there's a way to snap some mesh over the tops of these things, or not accidentally sever a cone, it would be pretty neat to have these take over with the bedroom setup. I also had some other ideas in mind, specifically television speakers replacement for when I don't have the sound system turned on. This is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. But they do work quite well as replacement TV speakers for when the sound system is turned off. So I can get basic stereo in listenable mid-range quality as opposed to the TV's built-in tinny speakers with 0 power draw when turned off and 1 watt when turned on. I think that's better than the speakers built into the TV. Well, it's better than the speakers built into the TV because they're not tinny as all heck. Well, there's one use for these things. Soundbar? What's that? This is crazy. You know, when I was playing around with 2 Altec Lansing ACS 56s hooked up in front-back with stereo mirroring, and using minis going every which way around my dorm room in college, with all the hack job sound stuff I was doing in those days, if you told me that at some point 2 speakers with rubbish stock amplification would return to my sound setup someday, I would have laughed at you. And yet here we are. The Logitech Z200s, they're not on sale for as deep a discount as they were around Black Friday, but they're floating around the $20 mark out there now, so I'm going to snag another pair for the bedroom setup and relegate the X140s to backup speaker status or the project area. But it's crazy, you know? It is absolutely crazy. Just playing 2 speakers actually have a place in my sound system again for basic stereo with barely any power draw, and I can just turn on the big sound system when I want to play a game or something, and I actually want the surround sound. This is crazy, but it's the way things are these days. The only way to improve this any further is to have the speakers have an option to run off a USB. So I don't have to find a place to plug them in anymore. I can just plug them into the service port on the television and have the USB power the speakers. That might be something to look into next go-around. But for now, I'm going to place another order for these, and they will be the new bedroom speakers. This is crazy, but it's the times we live in. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.